Batu, Marana, Nikto.
You must remember those words.
Gordon's alive.
You know what the Turing test is?
I know Kung Fu.
Dead or alive, you are coming with me.
My God, it's full of stars.
Back to Stories Out of Time and Space. I'm your regular host, Scott Weatherly, and as always, I'm joined by Julian Darius. Julian, how are you doing? You okay?
I'm doing awesome. It's great to be in America in 2025.
Yeah.
It's not at all like RoboCop predicted.
No, miles off. It's a utopia. Although we're sort of rounding out the RoboCop saga, the RoboCop franchise. On an odd note, we're back to for the 2014 movie, and we're gonna get into it. But it's been a long journey, from what I consider to be a substantial classic to a very solid. I know you prefer to have two, but I think it's a very solid follow up to kind of a mixed bag of shit, really, for almost like a decade and a half of kind of
Barely watchable stuff. Some of which is better than others, some of which is really shockingly bad. But all of which got made within a relatively short period. This was a franchise that produced more stuff than, Alien did in this period, than Terminator did, than Predator, than all of it. I mean, RoboCop got exploited.
Oh, the irony of that is not lost on us.
Absolutely.
RoboCop got OCP'd. I mean, it's crazy how much has been made. Now, I didn't realize, like you say, 6 hours of Prime Directives, 22 episodes of a TV show, 2 cartoon series, a whole host of comics. It's kind of mad. Like, a lot of stuff got made. I hadn't watched all of it. We watched most of it. Probably won't go. I'll probably go back to the first and second film again. That's going to be about it.
Yep. Same here.
Yeah.
That drop off is so steep. It really
insane.
Is.
Yeah.
I mean, oftentimes you sort of have I've recently finished the Venom series, and it's like the first one is,
films.
Yeah. And it's
okay.
The first one is, quite good. I'm impressed.
That's the only one I've seen. I've only ever seen the first one. Yeah.
The second one is it's fine. The third one is, you've made several mistakes. I mean, we're used to this kind of drop from sort of like a 6 to a 5 to a 4 or 7 to a 6 to a 5, and RoboCop is sort of 7 8, and then all 4s, and you're really happy when you get a 5.
Yeah, no, it's kind of weird. It's an odd. I mean, you're right. We've done a lot of franchise watches. So, we did the Alien one last year. We did all of it. We did all of Mad Max. We've done it before. We've done a number of sort of franchises, and they sort of wobble about. But the drop off, did the Terminator as well. We've sort of talked about that a few times, and we'll have to do that one day. But none of them drop off in this fashion, where the first two were oh no, they're sort of really substantially well done films. That then they go, well, the third one's going to be crap, so we might as well just maintain that level of crap. It's bizarre.
Yeah, people talk about the Terminator movies being such a big drop off, and it's really only the first two that are classic. And you're oh no, that franchise is great and consistent compared to RoboCop.
Yeah.
And I love RoboCop, but
I feel bad for having panned it in certain ways. There's been good and bad, but that kind of brings us up to 2014 and the reboot. And again, I remember when this was being touted around, there were a number of, I think Neil Blomkamp had an idea that was going to be called RoboCop Returns, and it was going to be the original, and it was going to be very much like my idea, like, you know, what's happened if this thing had been put on ice, like he has to be instigated and a series of other things. There was other ideas for the reboot. I think at one point they were going to look at doing an animated movie, and so they've talked about all kinds of different things, and then they ended up with the Joel Kinnaman starring vehicle from 2014. No, it's not a bad film. I'm gonna that's where I'm gonna start.
Like it.
Yeah.
I think it is. It's sort of not quite as good as the original two. It definitely has a different tone. It's definitely doing a more straight-on realistic, less satirical sort of tone to it. It's less over-the-top violent. It's much more a kind of straight movie with those elements toned down and, subsumed within that larger, sort of realistic 2014 kind of tone. But, I mean, the cast is one of the most amazing casts you could put together. I mean, stunning.
I was going to say, well, I'm just running through it. Like, even some of the sort of the B-list players are people you go, oh, I know that person. But, like, yeah. So, starring Joel Kinnaman as Alex Murphy in Robocop. And then you have Gary Oldman, Michael Keaton, Abby Cornish, Jackie Earle Haley, Michael Keith Williams, Samuel L. Jackson, Marie Jean Baptiste, Jay Bruchel, Jennifer Ely, and then it just keeps going on. Even Zach Grainer, who I know, who plays Senator Herbert Dreyfus. You're like, there's so many, like, oh, I know that guy. Oh, I know that guy. Like, but the fundamental cast is excellent.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think strangely, Joel Kinnaman is kind of, a little bit of the weak spot here. I think the movie kind of suffers from the way he plays Alex Murphy and the kind of militaristic sort of, Transformers-esque kind of way in which, he's a tough guy. But he's good. I mean, he's certainly not bad. I mean, for me, Keaton, Jackson, Oldman. Oldman is amazing.
Yeah. Yeah, I love Gary Oldman.
I do too.
But Sam Jackson in this, as Pat Novak, is phenomenal. Like, I kind of love him in this film. I think the Pat Novak bits, and the ending one especially, where he just goes off on one. It's kind of like, they've said to, like, Samuel L. Jackson, like, we're going to do this. This is the kind of think Alex Murphy, think sort of Alex Jones. Mm-hmm. Shock jock kind of thing, Fox News, blah, blah, blah. Just go have fun. And he creates this news presenter who is, I would watch. Like, I don't believe anything he says, but I'm like, I've got to watch Pat Novak. Like, the guy is crazy, and incredibly entertaining to watch. Yeah, it's brilliant.
Yeah, I think it's kind of like a futuristic version of, like, the O'Reilly factor, like, I'm telling the truth. And, it's even called, like, what, the Novak element.
The Novak element. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, this sort of, like, shock jock kind of thing. But no, Samuel L. Jackson has that sense of presence when he's letting himself turn loose. He is so phenomenally entertaining. And so, and the movie also, it looks expensive. It has a new very much more realistic take on RoboCop. It has more of a sense of the wider world than the RoboCop movies do, where the early ones we kept saying, like, okay, there are these allusions to, like, war in the Amazon rainforest, but we don't really know what the world looks like or ever see it outside of very brief generic kind of clips on TV. Here we have the entire project of RoboCop is geopolitical.
Oh no, I love that, the fact that this thing sort of it answers one of those questions that we've been talking about from the first film. Like, you have those sort of, like, the news sections that are saying, like, like you said, the war in the Amazon and this and that, like. And we said in the first film they actually have about the military contract they've got for the Ed 209 droid, parts, maintenance, who cares if it works, that kind of thing. Here we're like, oh, we're gonna see it, and these other sort of, like, droids that are used for the basis of the RoboCop technology, in service. Like we're actually going to see them, and it's kind of weird to say this. Like I think one of the things is, as an overall sort of piece, we're so used to RoboCop being a sort of associated with incredibly sort of dark humor and satire, and those elements that are very 80s and sort of like that didn't age through the 90s into the 2000s, despite them trying to maintain it. I think they've updated this incredibly well, and I think that if they'd have gone down that dark satire route 100% again, if they'd have tried for the Verhoeven approach, it would be awful. It would be just another part of that franchise exploitation that we've seen since '93. I think this take. I'm not 100% on board with all of it, but I'm so glad they've taken another angle and said, "Oh, we're going to try and do this differently." Like, we're not going to wipe his memory. We're not going to do this. We're not going to do that. It's different.
Well, and I think it's so smart. You think about the context of 2014, right? I mean, the sort of like vaguely militaristic, very expensive looking kind of style of filmmaking and plot is, pretty dominant. Yeah. This movie is not filled with wild MacGuffins, I mean, like so many movies of the era and since. I compare this to the remake of Total Recall.
Yes. Yeah.
That is a train wreck. I mean, that takes another Verhoeven classic and tries to be more realistic about it, but every choice it makes is bad. It strips certain elements of the original. This does too, but all of its choices don't work. Here, its choices largely work. And you think about, RoboCop in 2014, you'd say we live in the media satire world of RoboCop now, right?
Yeah.
So that satire doesn't work, right? In a world with Bill O'Reilly and InfoWars, RoboCop satire is kind of like, yeah, what's satirical about that?
This is just today. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. And so, and also we live in a world of drones, right? Like this movie is so aware of the, especially Obama era shift into drone warfare, and so conscious of it, and conscious of that as a political debate and a geopolitical point in terms of how technology is changing our understanding of, geopolitics and national borders. This movie is so conscious of that moment without it dating poorly as a result. Like it responds to 2014 in a way that I think is intelligent and, produces good effects for the most part.
Yeah, no, I agree. And I think, and not just on the war front as well, there are certain elements of this film that you sort of, when you watch it in hindsight, you go, oh, that's clever. Or like, that makes sense. So that I want to talk about this, they're in Tehran in the opening section. But more than that, when RoboCop is created, he's built in China. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And they're like, oh, you can't go home yet because this thing hasn't passed. This legislation hasn't passed. But it's kind of interesting that sort of like, oh, but you're fine in China. Like the Omnicorps has got this site in China, and so we're going to build you there. Like, like you say, there's kind of moments where you just say, oh, yeah, that makes total sense. Like, they've not done a black site in the US. They're like, no. This is exactly how it would be done. It's exactly how it is done. This is, Yeah,
you could just as easily set that in like Area 51, or some nonsense. But this feels of that moment, and it feels like intelligent choices are made here that are realistic, for the world we're in, as opposed to the 80s.
Yeah, exactly. And I think that's the thing. The thing is, I think everyone's so hung up on that Verhoeven original, which is, we've talked about and we both adore, that I think people sort of go, well, you can't change RoboCop. And you go, well, no, if it's a reflection of the time, then it needs to change. I think the problem with this film is, as a piece, is I don't think it's biting or scathing enough in the way that it approaches certain things. That it does in places, but then there's others where it backs off. And I think the sort of, it does the hero thing for RoboCop that we said was not the, it almost sort of like it's
Mhm.
the opposite hero story that was for Murphy, for Robocop / Murphy in the first film, and you sort of go, okay, actually this becomes the hero story, the superhero story in the end, and it even ends up with him getting the final shot is almost like, oh, he's finally got the full suit, and you're like, oh, okay, this is kind of all a little bit too, too superhero-y, but
Yeah, well, I mean, I'll say something good and something bad about that. I mean,
sure.
what's good is they do take that narrative to its logical conclusion, right? I mean, this is not Snake Eyes, right? Which is like, we'll do a third of the story. I mean, you feel like you've gone through the RoboCop
Oh, it's a full arc,
right?
Yeah.
And part of that is that he does address his corporate makers, and dethrone the equivalent of the old man. The old man's dead by the end of this.
Yeah.
And I think this is a much more satisfying RoboCop versus OCP arc than we ever got in the original. In terms of finally having that confrontation, they never could do that successfully in the original franchise. Here we get a version of it. It's a toned down version, but we get it, and it does take that arc to its logical conclusion. So kudos for, following those ideas through and giving us a complete arc. But I think the problem for me is that the further this goes on, the more it starts to feel like a conventional action 2014 movie. And so all of that, media savvy stuff, all of that geopolitics, all of the body horror, goes away. And it turns into, like you say, a sort of like enhanced superhero kind of movie. And the ending, feels, like a regression to, a good guy taking down a bad guy. Suddenly the bad guy is very bad. That's always been one of my biggest objections. And you don't feel like, Alex Murphy is traumatized, but it feels more like you've set him up to be the hero for the next movie or something.
Oh no, yeah, and I agree. I think, and there's still stuff, more things to explore in a follow-up film. I think this film doesn't rip away all the core elements in the first film, which is good. I mean, it does something as well. The ending I kind of like, which is semi RoboCop-esque in its sort of, that Verhoeven thing. And we said in the first film, the film sort of tells you what, Murphy said, the old man says, what's your name, son? He says Murphy, and then you say it goes bump RoboCop, and you're like, I mean, like, oh, he's still owned by a corporate overlord, like he's still owned by OCP, like it's, he's not he's not Batman, like he's not going to go off and become an independent hero. This film sort of kind of leads you to that at the end of it, like he's killed his overlords, and you go, cool, what the hell's going to happen next? Like, who's going to maintain him? And then all of a sudden, I love the fact you find out, oh, well, Omnicorp has a parent company, OCP, Omni Consumer Products. And you're like, oh, of course, in corporate America today, every company has a parent company. Like, there's always something ready to take over. So I like the fact that, like, oh, yes, he takes out Raymond Sellers, as in the Michael Keaton character, but there's always another big bad. Like, there's going to be another corporate overlord that can be wound up. So I like that. That felt very sort of, he's still beholden to a corporate entity at the end of this film. He's still not the superhero that, so they can still play with that in a nice way. And they don't tear away the family, in that there's still that family element that's going to be dealt with. And you've got to deal with it. Like in this film, they give you like a happy-ish ending. But there's going to come a point when, like, Abby Cornish's character is like, well, I can't take you, like, to my friend's wedding, and you're not coming to the family barbecue, and your son's
not going ice skating with your son.
Yeah, that's it. Like, you're not going to go see the ice hockey with your son, and all things like that. That drama needs to exist in another film. And I was like, okay, that's the kind of thing I'd have liked to have seen mixed up in the sort of in the follow up. Sort of like, yeah. So I liked all. I like a lot of what it's doing, but it feels toned down, as you say. It's kind of like it goes to its natural conclusion, but it constantly feels a little bit like playing it safe. That's the thing with this film; it plays it very safe. It's a 12A or a PG-13. It's very safe. He uses tasers at parts of the film rather than bullets, and that sort of thing. So,
Yeah, I kind of talk about how there are these movies that sort of like start good and slowly go downhill, and then there are movies that sort of start iffy and go uphill.
get better.
And,
Yeah.
this is a movie that starts amazingly and goes downhill, and it's not at a terrible place when it finishes, but it's at a lot lower place than where it started. And I mean, for me, some of it is playing it safe. I mean, there's so many good scenes, even when he's revealed to the public and he arrests somebody right away.
Yeah.
I mean, and I think they get a lot of the, it's in place of that ultra violent Verhoeven, body horror stuff. You get the famous scene of parts being pulled away, and you get shots of his brain.
We'll talk about that. Yeah.
And there are great moments. And I think also, like, the way those prime directives work in the original, it's never clear, like, why does he have memories of his original memories, but they're also digitized? How much of his body is intact? How do they program things that inhibit him, but he's still making decisions? None of that's really clear in the original. All of that stuff is a lot clearer this time around.
Yes.
My problem is, then they just throw it out. And he and it becomes willpower, like he's ignoring all of these controls. And so I find
the power of will, the power of love, the power of family. That's the shit that gets me annoyed. When they're like, he's rewriting his programming. No, that's not how programming works.
Right.
He's overriding his programming. Again, you're like, no, that's not what this does.
And that's literally vital to the conclusion, right? I mean, like, literally that's the way this is resolved, is by overpowering that program. So I hate all that stuff. And I think all that stuff is very conventional. And unfortunately, it comes, during the sort of like conventional superhero beating the big bad. At least there's no, I don't know, like there's no giant menace that special effects sequence at the end that you feel grinds on.
The city's not about to explode, or the world's not going to end, or there's no sky beam or anything like that. It's
just humans doing corporate shenanigans. But still, I feel like that power of that willpower stuff, and the conclusion is it just feels like it's regressed to the mean. It's regressed to the 2014, action movie. And I think this really needed to stand out to have legs in 2014's climate.
Oh, yeah, and I think there's as you said, there's moments they do it, and there are performances that I think do it as well. I mean, if we go through the story just a little bit, like this, we in the original, like we meet Alex Murphy on the day that he is to be killed. So we only sort of see a brief part of Murphy as a regular cop. In this, we get a much longer sort of section of life with Alex Murphy. We get to meet his partner, his own Lewis, who's
his sex change partner. I am so outraged.
Yeah.
I am so outraged by this. That DEI has to shoehorn another woman into the narrative and make Captain America a woman. Oh, wait, this goes in reverse?
Yeah. Well, no, they make him a black man.
Outraged, right? Those same movies were outraged?
No,
were they?
I didn't hear anything.
Oh!
It
only works one direction, right?
That's it, yeah. Michael Keith Williams is a DEI hire, clearly.
Yes.
Yeah, no, I like the sort of the relationship that exists between this Lewis and Murphy. They're clearly partners that have been together. They've been on cases, and they're sort of undercover, and you learn about how they're working. And this guy Verlaine, that they're trying to, is it Valance or I can't remember what his name is, but
villain. It's
close enough.
Yeah.
So they've got this kind of relationship. They've got this case that they're working on, and then you get to meet like Murphy's family, and you get to meet his wife and kid, and you get to see how their relationships. Vallon, that's his name. So Antoine Vallon. and how, like, there's a playfulness there, but he's got this relationship with his kid that's kind of sort of, they go to the hockey and all this other stuff, and so you're like, oh, they've got this family thing set up, that's cool. He's got some rivals in the station, and you get this a much clearer view of who he is. But but it's not like you're not just getting a chunk. It's not like this is interwoven with all the stuff you're finding out about the Dreyfus Act as well. So it's kind of like running in parallel. And so I love the fact more about Murphy. Like, to me, he feels like again, Kinnaman is fine. I actually really like Joel Kinnaman as an actor, but he feels a little, I don't know, he's a much more emotional Robocop than we've had previously, for the most part. So he's interesting, but I like the fact that that's been dripped in whilst you're learning about, you said, the wider world. You'll go see Tehran, and we'll talk about the opening scene in a second, but and then you'll see this whole thing about the Dreyfus Act, about not having robots in law enforcement or drones in law enforcement on American soil. So it's banned, it's prohibited, and it all sort of is building up to this moment of revelation when they're like, but let's put a person in the suit, let's put a person in the robot. And then they introduce Dr. Gary Oldman's character, what's his name, Dr. Dennett Norton. And so he's like, oh, I've done prosthetics, and again you get to learn more about, he's actually you see the guy playing the guitar, and this whole opening is I think is incredibly well done, of weaving these different elements together to relieve, resulting in this inevitable event of Murphy becoming Robocop. So the opening sort of act, I think, is really good.
Yeah, I agree for the most part. I think that it's very strong. I think the stuff with Samuel L. Jackson is great. I think the international stuff is great. I think the Dreyfus Act and Norton and the CEO Sellers is great. I think all of that stuff is working. I think the Alex Murphy stuff and the cop stuff, I'm glad that it's there. But there are times where it kind of drags or irritates me slightly, where it feels just a little conventional. And I get that, so the original Alex Murphy is kind of a little bit of an oddball. He's not a sort of buff, macho, body proud cop.
Yeah.
He's a little bit weird, right? He's a little bit quiet, I mean, of course, that actor couldn't play it any other way, but
yeah.
But I think that's part of my reaction to Kinnaman. I think he's a good actor, and I think that it makes more sense for him to be, a sort of, little more conventional, body proud kind of cop. But I think especially in his interactions with Lewis, they're going undercover, and it's almost like, I don't know, it just all feels sort of G.I. Joe-ish to me. It all just feels very conventional of I mean, they the white cop with the black cop who are partners, and they're, investigating a crime ring and running up against, their chief who doesn't want them to, it just all feels, I'm not saying it's bad. I'm just saying that for me, that stuff is, but he loves his family, that stuff is,
that's stuff I'm fine with. I'm kind of comfortable and happy with the convention because of what's coming. However, the one thing that does stand out for me as a bit of an issue is the whole argument of having these sort of droids or drones, taking over for law enforcement, is no more law enforcement officers have to die. That's kind of the point. And I'm going, cool. How many have died? How bad is crime? In Robocop, you get the picture. The police are wearing the body armor. They wear the riot helmets all the time. Crime in Detroit is a problem. You see that it's a problem at the start of the film. It's kind of brutal. It's a hard place to live. And so Robocop seems like a sort of a sensible not sensible, but is a solution that is presented to a problem. I don't ever see the problem. I mean, crime exists everywhere. Like, so is this Detroit, worse? Is it heightened? Do they have more crime? Is it, we don't see any officers really killed. They see a bit of a shootout at the beginning, but it seems no different, as you say, to any other conventional action movie where they're like, this could be Martin Riggs and Roger Murtaugh. This could be Lethal Weapon for all I care.
That's sort of what I mean.
Yeah, it should be more extreme, I suppose, in it's in the criminality. But
we don't get those Verhoeven sort of over the top violent stuff, in part because of the rating.
Yeah, and that's my problem. Is that but you need to see. It doesn't have to be violent, but you kind of have to get a sense that
things are crazy.
Things are crazy. I mean, yeah, even the police station in RoboCop, like that scene when they bring the guy in. And they're all trying to sort of bring down that one crook, and it's Anne Lewis that sort of steps up and takes him out. You get the sense that it's kind of tough being a cop in this part of Detroit. I don't get that sense in the 2014 version. I don't know the point of RoboCop in this film.
Well, one thing that I think this responds to, and I think in some ways successfully, in some ways not, is the crisis over American policing that was going on at this time. Yeah. And I think that it is a little early. Like this would be a different film if it had been released in 2015 or 2016. So interestingly, like, the George Zimmerman shooting of Trayvon Martin in Florida, where, basically a vigilante, trying to protect his neighborhood, gunned down this kid, and then was later acquitted. He was acquitted in 2013. Black Lives Matter comes into being in 2013. 2014 is Mike Brown in Ferguson, Eric Garner in New York. So in 2014, we've started to have this discussion about policing. And it seems to me like this is a missed opportunity. So, I mean, like there is a lot of just kind of support for the police, the idea of, like it's a tough job, they're military, it's a, we got to protect them is out there, right? So a little bit of that violence would go a long way, but I think, as an American, I know where the sentiment is coming from of sort of protect these police, right? But I think there's a missed opportunity here because part of the advantage of RoboCop, right, was always that they say like, well, he doesn't need downtime, right? He doesn't have these subjectivities, these human frailties. And of course, then you mostly see RoboCop sitting on a chair throughout, the old franchise, which is like, well, I don't know what you meant by downtime. But, in terms of the discussion of policing, we know that, when somebody decides to shoot, a decision is made in, 2 seconds or less. At that moment, the brain is in panic mode and all of your unconscious biases and fears come into play. You could be the most, fair and judicious and race blind, quote unquote, officer in the world. But if you have unconscious fears of, a black kid in a hoodie, just from media and stuff, in those 2 seconds when your amygdala's firing like crazy, you can wind up killing somebody. Yeah. This machine isn't going to have those problems. So there is an argument for not only saving officers, but also having fairer and more just policing, right? So like the old Verhoeven argument of like crime's out of control in the 80s and early 90s, right? Like, this is the era of crack and rising crime statistics and, Giuliani in New York and all of that. We're now in this different era where crime's actually down, but we're like unrealistically worried about cops having to deal with it. And at the same time, worried about these social justice issues. And I think that the movie sort of avoids that. It doesn't go into that element. And a little bit of that would be really successful, right? In other words, there is a liberal argument for, droids on the street, right?
Yeah.
And there is a conservative argument, and that's something they could kind of come together on.
Well, I think that would have been interesting to have that if the corporation was like making that, if Omnicorp and Raymond Sellers was making that argument, if they were like, we could reduce the number of police shootings because this is a robot, it's in a suit, or it's a drone, and the operator is miles away. There is less fear of being shot, so there is less likelihood of preemptive shootings or mistaken shootings, and we can bring these things down. De-escalation is easier with a droid than it is with a human. Yeah, it should really get into some of that, shouldn't it? Of that's what we're trying to get to. Because really, when you think about it, Senator Dreyfus is wrong in that case, because he's like, he's like, no, there should be a man on the street, like, droid should not, a robot shouldn't have the right to choose life and death for so and so and so and so. You're like, yeah, that's not kind of like the point,
right?
Because a scared human makes lots of mistakes.
Yeah, and I think that's my objection. It's a mild objection, right? But I mean, it's an objection that sort of the anti-OCP argument, as you say, by Dreyfus, is like, if we're going to have people be shot by cops, we want to ensure that a human is doing that, right? With all of the subjectivities involved in that, which are catastrophic, and B, all of the trauma of cops who have to shoot somebody, right? Like, on neither side of that equation is having a human pulling the trigger any good, right?
Yeah.
So, I mean, but it's framed in this kind of like pre-2014 way of we want a human pulling the trigger, and it just seems to me, specifically in 2014 and after, the argument should be, a robot isn't going to be traumatized, and it's going to be more objective. Hey, Black Lives Matter and Blue Lives Matter, you're on the same side on this.
Yes. And it's weird because like Jackie O'Haley's character, Maddox, kind of makes that point. And there's a moment he actually talks about, because they have this thing of, they show the simulation of Robocop versus one of the robots, and Robocop's always like 2.3 seconds slower because he's questioning himself before he goes into things. And the droid never misses and just sort of does things and saves the kid and all this other stuff, or saves the woman. And you're like, and Mattox is like, yeah, look, it's faster, it's more efficient, it's doing the thing. Like, I don't see what the problem is. Like, no one got hurt. And you're like, yeah, I can't see a fault in your argument right now. I don't know what the point is of this. Because this does lead them then to introducing this element of free will to reduce that. Because I like, Raymond Sellers says to Dr. Norton, and he says, like, I just want that to do that. Like, he says about, I want Robocop to do what the droid does. And as you said, that's when they come to this thing of like they're playing with his brain, and they introduce this override situation where the computer or the sort of the software takes over. And Murphy thinks he's doing in combat, like the visor comes down, which is really cool. And then he thinks he's in control, but actually the software is the stuff that's taken over, and that's doing all the decision making for him. He's kind of just as a passenger at that point. And I was like, okay, this is a really good idea. This is good. But it kind of proves the point that they're all right, because that's how he wins,
right,
in that situation. So I'm like, you're trying to show them as villains, but that they so far they seem to be making all the right decisions that are going to save people. So it's a little confused, I think, at times in like, are they the bad guys? Because Norton's clearly not the bad guy,
right?
But he's the one that's coming up with this software and this sort of this patch that does this thing. So it's interesting. But
the other thing is, I feel like these sort of existential elements of the first RoboCop are, they're different here. I wouldn't say they're not there, right? But it's much more like, kill me instead of making me live this way. The free will stuff, I feel like it's not explored enough. And, there are those famous experiments that go back to the 70s about, we now can measure when the brain is making a decision. There's a lot of debate about this, but you can see, at least in binary choices and in some more complex choices that the brain is making a decision before the consciousness is aware of that decision, right?
Mm.
A little bit of that would, like really enhance this plot, right? Because, the idea is somehow that software is making that decision, and free will is sort of an illusion. You can tell the brain, and it's pretty clear that like that consciousness part of the brain rationalizes how it's right all the time and how it's made a decision. That's a dynamic here that's really, at play, and yet I feel like that could be explored more. Maybe it would have been in the sequel, but I find that element, that whole free will element, fascinating. They kind of gloss over it, and then willpower becomes the answer.
Yeah.
But I really like this idea of like, I wish there were a little more dialogue from Norton of sort of like, oh, it's actually pretty easy to trick the brain into thinking it has free will and it's doing these things. It's not as hard as you think.
Yeah. No, I wish there was more of that. I do, because I think that's where the sort of the dilemma of this film wants to rest, isn't it? Like this thing of like, is he? No, it's not so much is he man or machine. It's sort of like, well, where is the free will? Like, what is he doing that is actually driven by his choice? And then when he starts looking for the people that led to his murder, as it were, because he doesn't actually die in this. He's just critically ill. When he sort of starts to look for those, that's that thing of like revenge. Okay, well, he could step away and he could be a good cop. Like, what's driving this path of investigation and stuff? Like, it should start. It could easily get into much more interesting concepts of what we do as people and what defines us as sort of human in that sense as well.
Yeah, and even after that, when they sort of lower his emotional levels, right? And
yeah, lower the dopamine
like,
and stuff. That's cool.
Yeah, they're pumping him with like antidepressants and like then all of that, has a lot to say about our, psychotropic drug use today. Wouldn't it be an advantage to, keep people a little calm and less emotional on these high stakes kind of jobs? Does that mean that he no longer has free will because he's being manipulated? If so, aren't all of us, in various ways? I mean, again, there are deeper themes here. I think they're fascinating. I want more of them. I want it to lean into that kind of stuff a little more. But then it kind of just doesn't.
No, I think and that's what I'm saying. I think this sort of is as you say, it's toned down. It kind of wants to go, oh, here's a philosophical conundrum. Here's something we're going to present, but we're going to present it, and then we're going to like go into an action scene.
Yep.
Because that's what this film is about. This is an action movie, so we're going to quickly go into, we need some action. So this is an action film before it's going to give you any of that sort of like political or psychological or philosophical sort of like debate or questions to answer or sort of anything, or even like a thesis on anything. It's going to sort of lay certain ideas out. It's almost like giving you that nudge to go, we know that there's this thing to talk about, and we're going to kind of give you a hint at it, but we actually just want to show Robocop shooting at other robots for 5 minutes. So we're going to quickly do that, and then we'll give you something else and that sort of thing. So it kind of feels toned down in that way. To an extent of like, it wouldn't surprise me if there was more in the script originally, and it might have been a longer film, and they've gone like, okay, cut some of this, that needs to go, tone that down, that kind of thing. So yeah, I do wonder if there was sort of originally more on that free will front, more on that kind of debate around who he is and that sort of thing. Wait. So yeah, let's I do go on.
Even having been on antidepressants myself, I mean, I had a bad run with them when I was a teenager, and I had moments where I remember, to this day, being furious and knowing that I was furious and sitting calmly waiting, knowing that I was furious and feeling like a torrent of emotions underneath, but I just couldn't get that mad about it. And so, like, my exterior was calm, but inside it was like, oh, I'm still feeling all the feelings. I just can't, like, access them or feel them.
Mm-hmm.
And that was a very surreal and upsetting experience. RoboCop should have those experiences, right? Like, he should be like, no, I'm calm. I see my wife. I see my kids. I'm focused on stopping the crime. I maybe can't cry about it, but like inside, I'm traumatized by this, right?
Yeah.
Even though like there isn't that sense of psychological trauma outside of just I've lost my body here.
Yeah, I think I think that's a really good point, because there is the scene when he sort of like, they reduce his dopamine levels and all that kind of stuff, and it's like, oh, he's like a zombie. Yeah, but he would still recognize them.
Mm-hmm.
It kind of makes him into like a pure robot, and it's just like, oh, we've just reduced his dopamine. You're going, yeah, but he should still sort of acknowledge his wife and kid. Like, he shouldn't just walk past them. He's not a sociopath or a psychopath. Like, he's still got emotions and cognitive recognition. There should be more there to say, oh, we're falling into the software, like the software has taken over, we've done something else. It's just to stop a psychotic break, because he gets stuck in the loop of watching his own death on the thingy. I'm like, cool, that's an interesting concept. Like, you would get obsessed with sort of, if you could have access all this footage, of course you would go and look at that. Like, I would. But yeah, it does feel a little bit like what they want. And this is that thing again, isn't it? Hitting those beats from the original, is they want to represent that period where RoboCop is RoboCop in the original film. But they've set it up. They haven't set it up to be that, because they've gone, well, he's still Alex Murphy. We know he's being introduced as Alex Murphy, Detective Alex Murphy. Like, it's a full body prosthesis. This isn't a robot kind of thing. They're not looking for that. They've gone for that different angle. But in doing so, they then have to try and pull that back to give us the RoboCop moments that we want to see, of him just being the machine, and then him breaking the programming to become the human again. And you're going like, yeah, but you didn't have that in the first place. Like, you chose that direction, and then you've sort of like waffled on it to try and give us the original film again, and that's kind of annoying.
The willpower thing is frustrating. I mean, I love that scene where he's unveiled, and he's upset, so they tone him down and he arrests somebody in the audience. I think that's a great scene. But then you cut from that to Novak doing his media thing, and there needs to be a scene where we see Alex Murphy saying, and we all have had experiences like this, where we say, yeah, I recognize my wife and kid. I don't know why I acted that way.
Yeah.
Why didn't I embrace them? Like, what was I frazzled? What was going? And then you find out, you're screwing with me. I'm, like, who am I? Am I, what does it mean? Like, why didn't I recognize them?
Well, it needs a scene, because that's kind of what ends up happening, isn't it? Like, he does end up finding out that they're screwing with him, and that sort of leads to the finale. But there needs to be that thing of, like you say, him being brought back up to normal, and then him confronting Norton and saying, what the hell happened? It's like, I could see them and I knew it was them, but I didn't care, and all I was focused on was on this other thing. Like, what did you do to me? And Norton needs to explain, like, dude, you were about to have a psychotic break. Like, we had to sort you out, level you out. We had to do this presentation. I was being forced to do it. It was the only way for you safely to do what had to be done, to for you and your family. I'm really sorry, but that's what had to happen, and I've rectified it. And then it needs to be like, and then like Sellers or the others need to be like, oh, but that worked really well. Like, we need to keep him at that kind of, that should be the thing of like, no, the instruction is now you keep him at that level, because that was really effective. And that's that then he should break it. But yeah, there needs to be that conversation between Murphy and Norton about that. That's like, this is why we did it. Because then he can accept it and be like, okay, that's scary that you can do that to me, but I appreciate that I didn't,
Freak out.
freak out and kill
Have a
someone.
panic
Like,
attack.
yeah. So I do feel like that conversation should happen, because we've already seen an early version of that. The very first time he sees his body before he gets taken apart, and he sort of like, Norton says, "I'll give him his legs, give him his body, whatever." And the first thing he does is grab Norton by the throat and says, like, "What have you done to me?" So we can sort of go, he can be like, "Alex, the first time we ever met, you tried to throttle me. Like, this, we knew what was going to happen. We had to do these things. So at least it have like some precedence."
This movie is a little more comfortable with the body damage to him and less the psychological damage. Like that psychological, all of this is done well, right? I mean, this is, again, it's sort of a little more complete and logical than the original RoboCop.
Yeah.
So I don't mean to ding it, but I feel like the movie is more comfortable with the visual of the body, right? And less comfortable with the existential mind stuff, right?
But that's an audience thing. I think that's an audience thing. That's them going like, right, we don't want to lose.
We have to sell
people.
this.
We have to sell this action movie about RoboCop, not about a paraplegic being, having to deal with the idea of self. And you're going like, oh,
yeah, right.
Okay. Yeah, that's a different movie. Like that, that's that's not a RoboCop movie. You go, no. So I think that's the problem, because the visual, and I love that. I mean, if we talk about the when he wakes up as RoboCop, that first time, like the suit is bulkier, it's a little sort of like, it's more akin to the original kind of suit. It's got the silver and the black, and it's there. And he breaks out. He sort of confronts Norton, and he sort of breaks out and he runs. And I like the fact that it's then like the visor comes down and it all looks cool. Like that suit, I ain't gonna lie, like, I love the updated version. If they'd have kept the original version, I would have been a bit like, it looks retro and kind of 80s. Like it needed an updating. So I'm glad that they did. But I like the fact that you start to see some of the software workings. The stuff we sort of said, like when we've seen like the ricocheting of a bullet or the prime objectives coming up, and they're kind of like, that's what we'll do in the 80s. We'll remind him of his prime objectives, and he'll be able to do some ricocheting, and he's going to be able to record things. And you go, oh, it's incredible. That's kind of like passé by 2014. So they're like, oh, this one's counting like angles of ascent and for jumping optimization and all this other stuff, and you're like, oh, that's kind of cool. Like, so
it's much more augmented reality.
Yeah,
it's like a really good augmented reality system, right? And I agree, that's done really well.
Yeah,
it's updated really effectively.
Yeah, so I'm sort of like, so when he does that escape and he starts to run through that sort of technology, and you see that he's in China in a sort of like basically like an Apple factory next to a rice paddy, which I thought was amazingly. I was like, I'm not sure if this is like racist or if like it's just making a comment. I'm gonna kind of leave it and move on. Yeah. But I like the fact that then they're just like, okay, cut him off, and he just collapses into the field. So they're like, oh, there is no escape. Like,
and Gary Oldman is brilliant in those sequences.
Yes.
I mean, because he is depicted as sort of humanistic, as sort of like, oh, no, let him run, right? Like he knows they can shut him off. He has, again, like later on, there's a similar scene where he says, I want to see what he does. Where he has a little bit more of a kind of, tolerant attitude. And it's just because of Gary Oldman's acting that's sold, that comes across. And it's really impressive to me.
I love him in this. I love Gary Oldman. Like, guy's one of my favorite actors. But it's one of those, again, like they could have played him like Dr. Frankenstein. Like, this is that thing we said in the first time. You never see the creator. Now they're like, oh, we've got Dr. Norton. He is the creator. But he's not like a mad creator. This isn't sort of a mad scientist moment. Like, he's doing this humanitarian reasons. Like, you see that he's been doing sort of like prostheses for like veterans and all this other stuff. You're like, cool, that's really impressive. Like, the hands playing the guitar scene is cool. But like you say,
Yeah.
but there is also like the science element to it. Because don't you say that thing of when you say let him run all this other stuff, there is still that element of going, oh, I wonder what's going to happen. Like, oh, I know we're in control, but I kind of want to see what's going to happen. So let's let this play out a little bit more. Like, and so I think there's still that kind of there's a little element of not evil or bad, but kind of like that scientist of going, oh, I want to experiment. Let's just push the boundaries a little bit more just to see what's going to happen. And so I do like
right.
that.
I think that also dovetails with the feeling of sort of it's better to convince him.
Yeah.
Like as he's running, he's going to see he can't really escape. The adrenaline is going to calm down, and I'm going to be able to speak to him, and I'm really smart. I'll be able to convince him. That's because of Oldman's performance that we feel all of these different cross currents to a very simple decision to, which could be in a lesser actor an inexplicable thing that they let him run, right? But because of that performance, we feel like, oh no, it's partly the scientist wanting to see what happens, it's partly humanistic, it's partly cocky. I'll be able to convince him. Yeah. It works.
Yeah. Oh no, 100%. And I think it works in that relationship between Murphy and Norton. Like, you feel that they have a relationship because they have this kind of like shared knowledge of things, and the knowledge being that Norton could switch him off at any moment.
Yeah. And Norton also has the motivation that this is going to fund the more pure science and humanitarian stuff that does not turn a profit for Omnicorp, right? So it's sort of like, okay, he's reluctant to do military stuff, but he's made his kind of deal with the devil.
I was going to say it's the deal with the devil, isn't it? A little bit. Yeah. And so I do like that, but I also like there's several scenes that with Norton that you kind of you see him questioning, but it's always that kind of thing again of like, well, let's just see what happens. But let's talk about the scene that I think we want to get to. You talked about the body horror, because I don't think the suit does not convey the body horror in the same way that the 80s suit did. And I think that's for you get the concept of certain things, but like he has kept his right hand, which is a joke about going back to the original film when they actually say like, why have you kept his arm? Or why have you kept his hand? Scrap it. So they kept it as a sort of a nod to that, obviously, for this film. But the scene when he's sort of in the suit, and he thinks when he sort of comes off, they say it's a body prosthesis, and he says like, "Get me out the suit. I can't breathe. I'm panicking. Like, get me out the suit." And they're like, "There is no suit. Like, you are the suit." And so he gets in there and says, "Show me." And then like the legs come away.
Mm-hmm.
And then the arms sort of come away, and then the chest, the torso.
Yeah.
And then it opens up, and there's just a pair of lungs and a heart in an encasement. And it's not even like a neck. There's a throat.
Uh-huh.
Entranced around sort of like metal, like hydraulics and stuff.
And the brain casing.
And the brain casing over the top.
And clearly damaged. Yeah.
And it then just Kinnaman's face. So, although that's incredibly impressive, and I do want to get into a minute, the difference being, and we said this about sort of the original 80s Robocop, when he takes the helmet off, and obviously you don't see it till the end, but when he does take that helmet off, and you realise that it's a face stretched over a metal casement, where like even part of the jaw is metal, it's got like locks in, and it's still got the bullet hole in the forehead. Like, that is horrific. Like, that still gives me like the creeps when you watch it and you're like, Jesus, like, this feels closer to like Prime Directives, where they've just gone, his face ends at a nice clean marker that goes around. Do you know what I mean? Like, there's no sort of, although you get to see the brain and the lungs and it's phenomenally sort of creepy, I don't feel that same kind of, I don't know, like gritty, dirty cyberpunk kind of design that tells me like this is a merging of man and machine. Do you know what I mean? Like, it feels very clean, which is typical of the modern 21st century design aesthetic.
Right.
But still, I don't know.
Yeah, I struggle with with those comparisons and with the scene and with the design for the new RoboCop. And I think that it's weird because the original is more clunky in its design. You know, it has this, you know, scene of Murphy with the face and all of this. And in the revised version, it's a thinner, more lithe kind of suit. But in a weird way, it looks more like a human.
Yeah.
So, I mean, it's like, it's funny because I feel much more like this is a cyborg story than the original. Like, the original feels like it's a machine that has some organic components, and ultimately you feel like that's Alex Murphy, but you don't really know how much of him survives, and you sort of feel as if, yes, whatever survives of Alex Murphy is truncated and mysterious and sort of controlled or buried within this machine. And in a weird way, it feels more like a robot that you know has a cyborg component, but it feels more like a robot with a cyborg component. I'm struggling for the right words here. Here, you have the very different body horror, and I think it's a fantastic reveal. It's the standout sequence of the film, but I'm very conscious of that brain being in control. This is all a very sophisticated version of the robot hand. And thus, even though they can control him in some ways more directly and precisely than the original movie, right? So that would seem to be he is more of a robot in this version than actually in the original, where it's, you know, it's Alex Murphy, you know. In a weird way, it feels more like this is a cyborg, right? The human component is much higher here than it is in the original. And that's despite that, in some ways, in the plot, it's less human than the original. And I just always have found myself confused by that balance.
I think it's a really good point, actually. I think, you know, I love this scene. It's just the lungs and everything like that. I think it's the face. And I think this is what this comes down to, is a big part of this. Is this story is about Alex Murphy. He is never not Alex Murphy throughout the entire film. Even though there's this whole thing about free will and they reduce his dopamine, and you know, he's just that he sort of, the free will is breaking the program. Whatever the fuck it is. He's never not Alex Murphy. They never don't refer to him as Murphy. And his face is on show constantly. And so I feel that, like, in this one, because again you have this scene where you are shown the organic elements, like what's left, and you see that sort of the operations that go on with the brain. What you are you have a much more humanistic connection with Kinnaman's Alex Murphy. Like, you are shown the organics, like there's a pair of lungs, a heart, you know, parts of the torso and the head or whatever. So you feel that, like, this is a human story. This is a person in a body prosthesis, like you said, like a cybernetic story, right? Even when they've got the hand, so you see that the hand is still a part and parcel of this. So I feel that that's part. Even when it does those more robotic things, it's constantly trying to tell you this is a man, this is a human. Like, this is not. There's no debate. You know, this isn't part man, part machine, all cop. This is a man that's been in a body prosthesis. I think the thing with RoboCop is the original with the Peter Weller Murphy is, once he dies after that horrific, you know, amazing sort of shootout scene, you don't see anything. Everything's, you just see stuff from his point of view. You know, you only ever see sort of like in the hospital bed, you know, or in the hospital being rushed in. It's all the people around. It's Murphy's point of view. then it rushes to the sort of we've said all those really cool scenes where it's sort of like it's New Year's Eve or it's been operated on and they're putting the diodes into his eyes and all this other stuff. So you only ever see from his perspective, and you'll see like the hand, the arm, you see sort of Morton being shown the hand with the titanium arm, with the grip and all sorts of stuff. So all you ever shown is what's being done to him.
Mm-hmm.
So you never have that humanistic connection, because the next time you see him, he's fully Robocop with the helmet on and he's just sort of like doing all the bits and pieces. And you don't see the face again until the end. And so really it feels to me like that's the point, isn't it? Like it's that sort of, although he starts to get his personality back or his memories back in the first film, like you still never see his face. He's still wearing the helmet and the visor. So he's a machine. You just see the machine elements.
Mm-hmm.
All you see in that original film is just the sort of the lower half of his face. It's until the end of the film when he removes it, and that's kind of meant to be the reveal, isn't it, to give you that human connection, because that's when he's Murphy. He's now taken the helmet off. And so I think what you're, from what you're saying, I feel the same, that like the 1987 is a Robocop movie.
Mm-hmm.
2014 is an Alex Murphy movie.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's well said. And I think your focus on the face is interesting.
Mm.
I think when you pull the prosthesis away and you see that basically the entire skull is intact.
Yeah.
Yes, there's this weird sort of dome, over the brain, which is awesome and disturbing.
Yeah.
And I love the close-ups of material, microchips in the brain and all that stuff. But you sort of have the feeling like, oh, okay, they've taken somebody's head. Like, if you say we're going to cut your head off and just going to drill it into a robot body, right? We would totally understand that as that's a human, right?
Exactly.
Now, it's not rational, right? This is part of our connection to faces, our connection to our
Mm-hmm.
heads, right? It's not rational. But we would understand that as a human just being given an exosuit, right? And I think, what you're saying is gets at how much we identify with our faces and with our brains, because his skull is so intact, forget the lungs and the hand, it has that feeling of like, oh yeah, this is just Alex Murphy, right? This is just an exosuit. And so I think you're right. I mean, even when Peter Weller reveals his face at the end of the first one, you have the sense of, yeah, it's a version of Alex Murphy. It's a kind of like, what am I sort of moment, right? It's not the same Alex Murphy. No. And even though Verhoeven wants it to be a triumph of the human soul, and a Jesus story and all that stuff, you don't feel that, right? What you feel is it's a different thing. It's a conglomeration of man and machine at best, or it's, a robot. Well, but here it definitely just feels like, yeah, that's you took a guy's brain and put it in a robot body. You took a guy's entire skull, Yeah. So, and I have always puzzled over that, and I think it's incredibly effective.
Mm.
But for these various reasons, we sort of are much more. It's so weird that I'm so much more conscious of a guy in a suit in this movie, whereas like the old one is just like styrofoam, sculpted styrofoam. I mean, it wasn't, but it looks that way.
I think it
somehow
comes down
I feel like that's more of a robot. I
think it comes down to two things, all right? And I do think this is important. And I think this is something, the things that sort of mix with the two films. The first one is the hand. We say about the face, but we say about the hand. Okay? And the way that this suit is designed, it has those clean lines. Like he's wearing a cowl. Like this feels like a superhero suit. And I think this goes to the fact that we'd already started the superhero age. So you'd had like Iron Man. I think by this point, Iron Man 2. Yeah, because you'd had like the Avengers. So you've seen a guy in a metal suit. Right. Yeah. And so everyone's going, oh yeah, I've seen Iron Man. This is what Iron Man looks like. And so there's nothing robotic about this because it's a complete suit. Like, so it looks like a guy in a suit because you can see his hand. And you go, well, his arm's up there and that goes to his head. I think the hand is a mistake. I honestly think the hand is a mistake. But the other thing is that thing, the line around his face. Okay. Because because it feels just like a guy in a suit. The difference between the things, like you say about Murphy, if Murphy in 87 Robocop, if Alex Murphy got sort of like, say, his face got slashed up or something without his helmet on or something, like the skull would be revealed, but like I feel like he would carry on. Do you know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
Like you could rip the skull off 87 Robocop, and he would
somebody
keep
could
going.
take a hot poker or an iron or something and destroy that face. It would still be Robocop.
Yes.
Yeah.
I feel if you did that to this version, it would
Change how you feel.
Change how you feel about him. Yeah.
Yeah, I agree.
The other thing, and this is something we have absolutely lauded, especially for Peter Weller, but others have tried to mimic, is the way he moved as Robocop.
Yep.
Because in that Robocop, like Weller really worked hard to give you the feel that like there was machinery moving Robocop, and the noise, the sound that, the heel, the calf and the ankle has got that hydraulic on, and there's all these elements that make you go, that's a machine. Like it moves, like the head moves and that sort of thing. Kinnaman only mimics that possibly once or twice in this film when he's got his dopamine down or when he's sort of investigating something.
Mm-hmm.
But the rest of the time, it's really slick. It looks like a guy in a suit running around. And I think that's a problem. Like this should be, they need to have this definition of, we can't mimic this. We can't mimic this element of human. That needs to be a problem for a future film. Like we can't mimic this element of humanity. So, it looks it looks odd rather than a guy in a sort of a protective Robocop suit.
Well, it's so interesting how this delicate balance between, robot and human and what you want to say versus what you depict, which sometimes are at odds, right? Like to accent the humanity, you want it to be more alien robotic suits and vice versa, right? And I guess I feel just a little let down by exactly what you're talking about. And you're quite right to, and it's insightful to talk about those movements. I find myself thinking about like actual drones, right? And I love that it's like the ED209 redesign is kind of,
it's kind of cool.
It's kind of cool. And that there also are these humanoid robots that basically are Robocop, right? That helps solve the problem of why haven't they made more Robocops than the original. But, when you think about all of these sort of like two-legged droids that we've built so far, a lot of them walk kind of differently and awkwardly, right? It's the algorithm that's controlling those limbs, or the design of those limbs is a little different. Imagine how effective and weird it would be in this movie if his limbs kind of were, chicken leg, kind of like back leg, and just were CGI'd, like not moving the way a human would move, right? Because it's weird that he jumps over that wall in China, and it's like intuitive to him, right?
Yeah.
But imagine if, like, yes, we see his face, but it's like he's not moving the way a human, like that's not the way a human would move, even if it were more live, right? And not those like 45-degree turns that the original Robocop takes, but just that sense of that creepy alien sense of sort of like alien robotic anatomy that we don't totally understand, that would just distance us from him a little bit.
Well, I think that's the thing. I think, I don't know going that far, because that's what Kane, Robocop 2 Kane had, didn't it? Was there sort of like those, like you say, those sort of back bending legs and all that kind of stuff, which is cool.
Yeah, I love that.
But I think because one of the points they're trying to make in this film is that because they're trying to sell a man in a man in a robot. They're trying to sell. That's what Omnicorp is trying to get past for the Dreyfus Act is, this is a combination of man and machine. We've got to sell the public on something they can aspire to. He says about it being aspirational almost, which is creepy as fuck when you think about it. So it needs to look human, but you need to have you're right. But I think it needs to have something that keeps it, or like being horrific. I think that was always the point that's like with the original Robocop, with the Peter Weller one, is that thing of like, he's not aspirational. Like, I don't want to be Robocop. I don't want to be the X because it's
Right.
horrific. Like, you realize he has no sort of like, he has no sense, he has no feeling. Like, he eats baby food and all sorts of stuff. Like, it's ridiculous. But like, it's horrific the way he has to be sort of like treated. This doesn't have that same horrificness, because you look at like Kinnaman in this suit and you go, the dude in a suit, it's kind of a cool suit actually. That would look kind of cool as a Halloween costume. Like, I'm sure there's people that have, I don't know, I've seen people varying degrees of success do like cosplay costumes of the original Robocop, but it always feels like, oh, it's a dude wearing a suit. But the Peter Weller one felt like a machine. If they explained to like, they do have a scene where they're trying to design it, but there needs to be something that like Dr. Norton has to say, like, we can't do that. Technology doesn't give us that. There's always going to be this clunkiness about the movement or something that, we can do hands, but I can't do this level of prosthesis with that level of coordination. It doesn't work. I don't know. It just feels too, as you said, live is a really good word. Like, it just feels too slick, and I'm like, I don't like that. It needs to feel it needs to feel clunky.
Well, I want. It's this balance of humanity and something alien, something other, right? That we look at and say, that's not human. And I love what you say about it being aspirational, right? Because so many of these superhero narratives, like somebody goes through a trauma, but at the end, they've got superpowers and they're flying around, and you say, that'd be awesome. I'd love to do that, right? Unfortunately, like, I wouldn't want to, be reduced to lungs and a head, but especially if I had a terminal disease or something, like this is a lot better than being cryogenically frozen, right? Like, this sounds like a pretty decent option. Whereas the original, you'd say, am I going to be a dying organism, or am I going to have to go through no, I think I would rather die, right? Like, that's what happens in the original is so horrific. You would not want to exist in that state. Here, it's a superhero on a suit, right? It is aspirational.
I think this goes back to a lot of things of this idea of like, how we've sort of presented robotics and stuff, because even the original Terminator, and again, it got softened for T2, right? Which, I think was a bit of a mistake. It's one of the kind of dinks I'd give T2, considering I love that film. But in the first film, they were like, we chose Arnie because no one looks like Arnie, but we want him to look and talk and move. Like, we're not saying like 100% robotic, but like odd. Everything he does has got to be kind of stiff and kind of, so when he moves around, it's not like he runs, but even when he runs in that film, it's kind of very upright, and, there's bits and pieces like, and so it never kind of feels like a human. The Terminator, the T-800 never feels like a human. It always feels like a robot in a meat suit, as it were. Mm-hmm. And again, going back to seeing around the face, like one of the first injuries that really like fucks you up with that film is when he has to take out his eye, and you see the sort of the eye moving and the red, the red robotic eye, and you're like, oh shit, yeah, there's a robot under this. This is crazy. We really do have something about faces and revealing something underneath. And this film doesn't do that. Like, yes, they kind of, it's almost like that reveal of the lungs and everything, which is excellently done. But it's almost like tokenism, because it's kind of like, oh, we've got to show you what's left. But then when we put it back, and Kinnaman actually says, I never want to see it. I never do this again. I never want to see this again. And my family I never want my family to see me again. It's kind of like a cop out where I'm going like, oh no, this is because you've given this as a token glance for us to understand, and it's brilliant. But beyond this, it's a dude in a suit, and that's kind of how it's going to feel. Even when he sort of gets shot up, when he takes on Valen and all that, like he gets shot up, and the visor gets shot up, and his chest plate gets blown up. It still never feels as sort of like, I'm still going like, yeah, it's not enough damage for me to be saying, oh yeah, this is it's a robot. I don't know. It always feels like a dude in a suit, and I kind of struggle with that.
Yeah, and they spend a lot of money for it to not feel that way, right?
Yeah.
But you're right. I mean, I kind of struggle with that. And it feels like you could take that lungs and skull, you could attach it to like a jetpack or a giant mecha or something, and
Yeah.
it'd be like, oh, cool, that'd be so awesome. I could have different bodies I attach to. I know what you mean. Even like that damage to his body, is you kind of notice it, but there's no agony over it. There's no, it doesn't feel like, oh, I'm watching, part of his new body get stripped away. It's just like, this is my mech suit, right? This is my Iron Man suit that got damaged.
Yeah,
Yeah,
because
and I think all of this is kind of missed opportunities.
Yeah, again, like we said about the horror of that, of RoboCop and RoboCop 2, sort of like those two things. In the first one, when he gets shot up by the police, and he's trying to escape and stuff, like or he's fighting Ed 209 in the OCP building, and you've got like he's shot, he's got like a hole in his chest plate, and it's kind of got like oil coming out, and it's like it looks like you're going like, oh shit, like he's hurt, like he's damaged, like the silver of the suit helps kind of present the dirt and the damage of the thing. And the same in the second film, when the Kane and the group sort of like take him the drill to him and dismantle him, and he's all messed up. The suit's got like the dents in the front, and it's all sort of the wires are coming out and all that. So then you're going like, oh crap, like this is insane, like this is horrendous. And in this one, because he's all black with black innards and black rods, you're going like, I can't really see shit. Like it doesn't seem to make a great deal of difference to me. Like you said, this is Iron Man with an Iron Man suit.
Yeah, I mean, I think also the mystery of what's in the RoboCop suit. Now, I mean, I like that they answer it, but the mystery of what's in the RoboCop suit, you sort of wonder, you feel like he's stuck in that body. You don't have any sense that you could pull out the original brain and the original, organics and just slap them into another structure, right? So you see that damage and you think, has any part of the organics been damaged? And that is the one body Alex Murphy has, right? Like, I think as good as that sequence is of stripping the parts away from RoboCop in the remake, it gives you a sense of that body not being him.
Yes.
Right? Like, that body is replaceable. In the original, you don't know if the organics are getting properly fed. You don't know if, you're worried for him, right? And that he's relying on OCP to repair him. But if that suit dies, he dies, right? In this one, because if that suit gets damaged any amount, you could pull the organics out and just put another suit around it. And so as good as that scene is, it kind of costs you a lot.
Yes. It does. It just doesn't feel... I don't know. Yes. I think the thing is, you say about how much they've spent on this, the cost list of it, it kind of backfires on them, doesn't it? Because they're going, we can do 2014 special effects. And you're going, brilliant. What have you got? And you go, this. And you go, it looks slick and it looks very human. And you're going like, I don't want that. I don't need that. Like, I want something different. I thought about, as I watched this, actually, what was the Will Smith film from like 2003, 2004? iRobot. Thank you. And they have the droids in that. And they have this thing of like, they've got the sort of the glow faces and they sort of, again, they have a sort of a humanoid, aesthetic. Yeah. An Apple aesthetic, but they move in a certain way. Although they move, it's kind of still very stiff and very sort of like, at no point do they go, oh, we want them to move as fluid as they do crazy stuff. Like, they jump on cars that are moving and they swarm over things. And maybe we'll do that film one day, because I actually think it's kind of cool, but you never don't think, oh, it's a robot. Mm-hmm. It feels other. They are other. They are a threat to humanity in that sense. And I think that's the problem, isn't it? All those other films, when they show the robot being the other and stuff, like, it needs to have that. Even like weirdly, like the Matrix, when you sort of see Agent Smith, although he's not a robot in the same physical sense, because it's all doing a computer program. He's a computer program. and they have them move and do things in a different way that tells you they are other, they are different. Like this is something that needs to be avoided, and I think that's the problem. I think this is it. I think this needs to be the other, like but they don't want the other. They want the hero. They want Batman.
Right, and of course this is being produced in a context in which those movies have done very well, right?
Yeah.
And so, right, othering your hero is, which is so much of what I love about the original. I mean, the willingness, and I always love stories about, outsiders and, people who we have some barrier to identification, but we overcome those barriers. I mean, that's so much of what fiction does. Superficial fiction says, well, what if you were really a wizard? What if you could really fly, right? Like, that's wish fulfillment. That's not asking those questions. And I think it does suffer from trying to fit itself within that context.
Yeah.
Even though I like that sequence, right? I like a lot. I mean, we're criticizing, but I mean, I like this movie. And there's a lot this movie is doing that's really good. And I think if you're going to do a sort of Alex Murphy in a suit movie, this is pretty good. I would have more complaints over the conclusion, than I would over these, tonal things. But I agree with you that, I mean, these tonal things are a problem, right? And they do make this sort of a less interesting and less deep film.
And I think you said that less interesting. That's this key point. But the thing about this thing, because I think there's a commercialism to this film where they've gone, we want to sell Robocop toys, we want to sell this, we want to sell that. I mean, I'm pretty sure they were going, right, the irony of them, there's a marketing person in this, and we can do that. I'm sure there was someone doing the same externally, going, right, how do we sell a helmet visor to kids? Like, what noises can it make? Can it have red lights on? Like, how do you do this? How do you do that? Like, they're fully intending to sell this and package it as a toy. Okay, have it looking slick and all that kind of thing is going to sell because it'll match with these other things. The irony of that being that, and we've said this about a lot of other sort of like characters, you could give me a silhouette of 87's Robocop and I will recognize that instantly. You could give me a silhouette of this one, and I would be a bit. I don't know. It could be anything from It could be any superhero film from 2008 to 2019,
or a guy in a motorcycle helmet.
Yeah.
I mean, the irony is, like, I find myself thinking about the merchandising aspect and how, like, with the original, you sort of obviously they merchandised the hell out of that. They made multiple animated shows, But you sort of feel like that's so bizarre. It's because if you had a toy of Robocop, it needs to have a voice chip where it screams an existential pain, right?
Yes.
Like, here, if you merchandise this Robocop, you'd say, right, that makes perfect sense, right? Like, this Robocop could be plugged into the animated show as just, I'm a robot cop having adventures, and you would feel pretty fine with that.
Yes.
You're not losing a lot.
No.
That's quite stunning to realize.
It's toyetic. The motorbike that he has and the way that he rides it. I was like, oh, that's easy to replicate in a toy. I'm sure that's what they were, there were certain aspects, that sort of thing. And the irony is they highlight that in the film. And I'm like, oh, you're kind of giving away your own game. And I love that scene when they go through the designs and they show, they have the sort of the basic version that is Murphy in China, and then they go through different versions, and one of them is the original 87, and they say, oh, this scared the crap out of people in the penitentiary. Like, this really rated really highly on the intimidation factor, and you're like, cool, that's a really good acknowledgement. And then it transforms and it comes back and it's got blue lights on it, and even like Michael Keaton, Raymond Sellers is like, that's kind of cringe.
Yeah.
But like the marketing guy's like, it transforms. The kids love a transformer, and you're just like, oh, that's a cool idea. It's funny that he's looking at kids and how they can sell this. The more I'm talking to you about this, the more I'm sort of realizing that
this problem of the superhero, the cyborg cop,
Yeah.
right, being a cool thing, right,
Yeah.
losing that existential edge, really feels more like a betrayal of the core concept, right?
It does. It is.
You know,
Yeah.
because it, you know, it's so easy to fit it. It's not just the toyetic designs, right? It's that it's made for serial adventures, right?
Yeah.
You can use that RoboCop toy and not feel like, you know, this every day is hell for this guy. Like, you know.
Yeah, I mean, one of the reasons we love RoboCop 2 is for that scene where it kind of highlights and says, yeah, the big problem is Murphy's a bit of a one-off. Like but he is dealing with some kind of existential horror daily.
Yeah.
And others can't deal with it and will commit suicide instantly.
Right.
And you're like, oh shit, like this is not aspirational. No one wants to be RoboCop. This is awful.
Yes, absolutely.
And in this one, you're kind of like, yeah, it's kind of cool. Like I expect him to go off and hunt some, bone machine or whatever the hell it's going to be, kind of protecting Delta City in the next film. Like it feels, like as you say, episodic.
Yeah, you can kind of drop him into the DC or Marvel universe, and
100%.
say, okay,
Yeah.
Alien. I didn't think aliens would attack, but hey, aliens attacked, and now RoboCop's going to be one of the defenders.
Yeah.
Yeah.
On that note, that one of the things that's you say about the toy, the other thing that comes to mind, and we say about this thing, is the vision, as in like RoboCop's vision. So in the first film, it's used a couple of times, but you get that kind of video line sort of to show you it's the RoboCop perspective, and then you obviously record stuff, and it looks cool. It's got the green line, which is kind of like, this is what computers look like. Yeah, and all that kind of stuff, right? The one thing in this that's interesting is when he attacks Valen's drug house. I mean, again, we sort of we highlighted how cool the shootouts are in the original RoboCop and in RoboCop 2. Like it's RoboCop pulling off sort of like silly poses, and like he's being shot at, but like
looking away from the people he's shooting, and
yeah,
but
then,
also super brutal, right? I mean, just watching people get gunned down, and you kind of feel again sort of alienated from the hero. Yeah,
like he's brutal. Like the guy's just sort of walking through a drug den and killing people left, right, and center. And then when he, in order to get one guy, just so he can get the villain. So, but in this one, when he attacks Valen's drug den, firstly he's running around, like say, all lined, and it's much more humanistic. But also it goes dark, so you don't see anyone really get killed. But then it also goes into first-person shooter mode, and I'm like, oh, I'm sure you could play this on the PS4. Like this feels again like a scene. The gun's up, it's got in like heat vision or what, sort of like. And I was just like, again watching it this time, I was like, okay, this is a computer game.
And not only that, but it's got the kill count. It was this very video. Like, why would you do that? Why would you build a RoboCop
video? Health, kill count. Yeah, like it felt very, very video game, and I was just like, oh, okay, this is.
The darkness really bothered me because, logically, I guess, I mean, it's like the bad guys have, night vision goggles on. RoboCop can obviously see thermals. What was the advantage to either side of the darkness? And then it's sort of one of these action scenes where there's a lot of action going on. There's a lot of guys falling and shots being fired, but you don't really see anything. You just kind of see like chiaroscuro sort of like faces against it. And so you don't even have a sense of setting. You just have a sense of him moving around and shooting people. I guess this is happening, right? And like you said,
exactly
it's a video game. And maybe that's done to keep the PG-13 rating.
It is,
but
I
it is
100%
a bad action sequence.
No, I 100% believe this is an action scene where they were like, we want to kill lots of people because that's RoboCop, but we can't show lots of people being killed. We just kind of need to suggest that lots of people have been killed. We shall do it in the dark. I think the only part of this that looked cool is the fact that when it goes dark, you see Robocop's red visor.
Mm-hmm.
That looks cool, and I'm like, oh, okay, that looks kind of cool. But it didn't need to be the whole scene in the dark. By the end of it, I'm kind of like you said, I'm like, this is a bad action scene. This is clearly done to hide violence. I love the fact you pointed out one side is wearing night vision goggles, the other one can see thermals. It's pointless.
Right.
It's so silly.
Yeah, I'm like, why am I watching this? Why are we doing this?
Yeah. So yeah, no, it's all this stuff that's telling me PG-13. Like, we can't do this, can't do that, or like we can, but it's got to be hidden, or this is that thing of like I always laugh at this thing of like one of the things of early 2000 AD, but when it was Action Comics, then became 2000 AD, they were like, we can't have red blood, so instead we're going to kill aliens, and they've got green blood, so green blood's fine. So we can be as brutal as we want with aliens with green blood or blue blood, we just can't show red blood. And you're going like, but what? That makes no sense. That's just ridiculous.
Just as violent.
Yeah.
Right? I mean, yeah. Yeah, and if anything, you're using more blue blood to, to compensate for the lack of red blood, so it becomes more violent.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, the other thing is that when you talk about the original, the sense to return to this idea of how alien RoboCop is, right? Like, RoboCop feels like a robot mowing down human beings, and you kind of feel bad for those drug dealers, right?
Yeah.
And you're like, I know they're bad, but like, they're facing a monster, right? Like, I mean, like watching RoboCop 2, where he's really a monster, you really feel that. But you even feel some of that in the original. Because the violence is toned down here, again, the sense of feeling any sense of othering of, or any distance from Alex Murphy is lessened, right? So he's just the action hero going in and, like he's the ultimate, special forces guy now, right? That's what you're supposed to feel about this scene. You're not supposed to feel like you don't get close-ups of guys' jaws being shot off by the bullets, right? He's not standing in sinew and blood, coating the warehouse floor at the end, right? And so all of, the violence is so sanitized in the typical Hollywood fashion that, again, any way in which we might have this story be more complex, more interesting, more ethically or morally disturbing, it doesn't want you to be ethically disturbed by the hero, which is such a problem with the superhero narrative, right?
Yes.
Even though what he's doing is massacring, using robotic technology to massacre, I mean, and I don't understand why they all keep firing at him, I mean, this is a problem I have in a lot of these scenes, but
actually, I'll give this is one of those things, this does address two things that we've complained about with the previous RoboCop. And the two things were, what is RoboCop's vulnerability level? Like, what can he take? And also, why not shoot him in the face? This actually gives you both. So this actually says, like, your body armor will tolerate up to about a 50 caliber repeat round. Like, below that, you're pretty good, but you'll get, you could get damage from repeat shots, but after 50 caliber, like, you're going to get damage. So you kind of get a scale of what he can take. And that's why when they take on Valen, like, Valen's going, we've got these guns, they're equivalent of like 50 caliber, and it starts to do him damage. And like, I like this fact, like, it shatters part of his visor, and they think he's dead, and then he gets up. Like, that's a good part of that action. The other one is, they actually say in that scene, shoot him in the face. And there is a section in the thing when he's running across the hall, and he puts up an arm and covers his entire face, as he's sort of like, and you see the bullets bouncing off his arm that would have hit him in the face. And again, I'm like, oh, okay, cool. They've kind of acknowledged this problem and they've addressed it. So fair play, well done. You haven't made a big deal of it. I recognize what you've done. Well done.
Good point.
So, yeah.
Yeah, and also, part of the overall intelligence, despite our criticisms of this movie.
Yeah. Oh yeah, and that's the thing. I think the more I sort of like I pass out pieces of this film, I genuinely think that there is a good film in here that has been hampered by the need for franchise, the need for toyetic, the need for a PG-13 rating.
I would go further and say I think this is a good film. It's certainly not great, right? But I mean, this is, it's fine at worst, right? But I mean, I do think this is a good film, for an action or kind of thing. I think in retrospect, it feels even better than it did originally, just because all of these bad, stupid things that we are objecting to and going for the, superhero kind of, morally simplistic narrative have become so exaggerated in the years since that this feels, those elements feel like, that's kind of what you have to do instead of feeling like compromises.
Yeah, no, that's a fair point. So anyway, it sort of escalates into like Valen gets taken down. We find out there's sort of there is corruption within the police. It's not just the two sort of cops. That is actually the chief of police who's corrupt. So gets that all sort of sorted out. But I like this point of, and I think this again is an interesting scene because it's all been laid out. He shoots one of the two cops with a taser, to be fair, all right. And I like the fact he says to the and he uses it a couple of times. He's sort of got this like 50 watt or whatever it is sort of taser. Like, it's not going to kill you, but it's going to hurt like hell and it's going to make you shit yourself, kind of thing. Like but he shoots one of the sort of guys and then he's going to go after the chief of police, and he's recording it all. And again, he can sort of use Wi-Fi or whatever. He can broadcast this to the surrounding televisions in the police station, and Maddox switches him off. Mm-hmm. Again, and they're like, he was about to shoot the chief of police. It's a bad PR thing, and Sellers is like, yeah, bring him in, and they're going to sort of. They spin this narrative of the hero cop that he was, that even he solved his own murder, he took out this drug thing, and in the process he ended up like sacrificing his life even with all he had to bring in these corrupt cops. And they're going to run this narrative, and they're going to bring use Pat Novak and everything to sort of present this story and stuff. Mm-hmm. And I like that they're sort of, this comes to the climax of like it. This is again where it's a good film. It's got good ideas, and you kind of realize that Murphy was never a long-term plan. Mm-hmm. He was always.
He's a stepping stone to.
He's a stepping stone to something else, and he was always going to be turned off or sort of like mothballed or whatever. Like, this was never a solution to a long-term problem. This was to get the Dreyfus Act repealed, and then they were basically going to sort of like shut him down. And so that kind of adds into that kind of, the corporate machinations and all this other stuff that we expect from RoboCop. So I like the fact it goes there, that it kind of says, and they're going to shut him down and that's it. And the end of the film would just be him being switched off. And Norton steps in and so on and so forth. And we get to the sort of the big fight at the end. But I don't know. I like that. Again, whether like it kind of sort of shows that like, RoboCop's, although he's the main character, like he's kind of not the leader or the sort of the owner of his own story. Like other people are kind of involved all the time.
I like that too. I also really like the idea of the cop kind of solving his own murder. You know, like that's so intoxicatingly good, right?
Yeah.
And
I love the fact that the marketing guy even says like, "Why didn't I think of that?" Like, we should have let him do this anyway. This is a brilliant idea.
Yeah, and it makes sense. Like, you programmed him to go after criminals. Of course, he's gonna go after the criminals who killed him. Like, they sort of haven't thought about that. And also, that same zeal that he has that makes him go after the guy in the public reveal scene is the same zeal that's going to make him go after the chief of police. Like, this feels very 2000 AD. This feels very like just fun and logical, and RoboCop is so efficient doing so. I mean, there are a couple moments where, despite my statements about how this movie isn't willing to let us kind of think bad about Alex Murphy, it does let us. It does give us him shooting somebody who, is in a confession chair, and there's no need to shoot him, as he strolls confidently to the chief of police. There's also, as you were saying, like the taser, like you're going to shit yourself kind of scene, which I do wonder, you're recording, like, this is clearly police brutality. You're threatening unnecessary violence. I don't know if they're aware of that. But but the efficiency, the way that it's acted and the way that it's edited to make it seem like he is just an efficient crime-solving machine who is just going to plow his way through the police department all the way up the upper echelons until he gets to that chief of police is really well done. And so, although I have a few complaints with the film at this point, that whole sequence, I think, this whole middle part, does have a lot going for it. And I am kind of sold on the action of it and the central idea of it.
Yeah, it works. I agree. I like this idea, and it's running in parallel with some of the stuff we haven't talked about. We need to sort of mention it to get to the climax. Is the family drama as well, which is running I don't know how I feel about this. You have Abby Cornish as his wife, and he's got a son. And when he's away from home, he talks to her over the phone, but he's sort of zoomed in on his own face so she can't see all the prostheses, which is I kind of like some of that. And then when he comes in though, and his son, this is one of the things about a performance and how a line is delivered. And you think you listen to a line being delivered, and you sort of go, we need to remove that line or we need to change it. So when he meets his son and he kneels down, and his son sort of looks at him, he says, "Do you want to touch it?" And I'm like, dude, that just you need to sort of expand on that. This needs to be. But yeah, the family stuff kind of, it's weird. Like, it's important for the end because it's about him protecting his family from sellers and stuff. But like, I don't know.
It doesn't quite make sense. Like, I wonder why, given how savvy Omnicorp is with presentation and running this meeting and stuff, why they haven't paid that family already and gotten them in, once every few days to talk to Robocop, controlled Alex Murphy's levels, so that goes basically okay. I mean, you'd think they would be a little more savvy about this. I think that's my main complaint there.
No, I agree. And I think, almost like a hostage sort of going like, they're treating me well. The food is very nice, that kind of thing.
That'd be great. I would love the sort of like Robocop hostage video, and they're like, she's not buying it. We're gonna need to have them actually meet next week. Yeah,
exactly. But even when she does face down with Robocop, and she sort of says like, it's almost like the Anne Lewis scene, isn't it? When she's like, like, Murphy, it's you. Like, she confronts him to be like, I know that, you're this man and this is your. It's a thing of like, this is what's happening to your son, and it's the son's reaction of what he's going through that kind of starts to break the barrier and sort of make him sort of deal with this stuff. And this we've said about how good some of the software sort of designs or the upgrades are. This one feels like complete and utter pish to me, and it kind of irritates me, is when he takes the video and it has like a person's face, and it'd be like hysteria, fear, and and I'm like, piss off. Like, you can't take a photo and then register sort of someone's face. That looks
there are like 5 dials for their emotional settings. But what really bothers me, a lot of the sort of augmented reality has those sort of like conclusions written along it that feel unconvincing, right? Where it's
unconvincing. Like, it feels
having a panic attack. It's like, really, there's no setting for that? Like, it's pretty sophisticated software.
Yeah, but what purpose does that really solve? Because he has to stop to read the things in his vision. So you can't use these in an active crime situation because you have to stop and read it, and you'd be like, they'd run off.
Well, they're transparently really there to just give you plot information, right?
100%.
It's like lots of dials, but the conclusion in 24-point font is like, misses his dad. Not sure that's a setting, but I get you've conveyed plot information.
Yeah, I mean, you might as well just say like, lonely, sad, and you're just like, oh, well, that's okay, cool. Well, thank you for telling us that.
tragic origin story.
Yeah. Just so you know, will eventually become executive at Omni Consumer Products.
Yeah.
I don't know, it's fine. And then, but I think this is where if this had a sequel, and I think I wish it had have had. I really do wish it had a sequel. This is where I would have taken this. Would be going like with the family going like, I want to care for my family. I'm a known like a celebrity cop kind of thing, but also, let's be clear about this. I can't have sex with my wife. I can't really share any intimacy with my son because every time I hug him, I've just got this sort of like robotic suit. You know, like it needs to sort of deal with this thing of, and I think Robocop 2, the scene, I still think that scene of Murphy's wife coming in and sort of like he says touch it, and she touches the skin, she says it's cold, and then Alex, we know it's Alex Murphy, and him saying they made this to honor him is chilling and heartbreaking.
Yeah, the sacrifice there.
Yeah. And then he watches them sort of like he watches her break down on the street outside and sort of like has to move on with it. Like I don't know, I feel like you can't do that here.
Right.
But she has to. They have to distance themselves from the family because it's untenable.
Can't be
like,
going home.
No.
You know? Right. Yeah. No. I mean, in the sequel, Dr. Newman makes the prosthetic penis to allow him to.
I 100% was like, that's what's going to happen. Like they'll have like this of like, I mean, this new software.
Robocop, Alex, I've been working nonstop and I have an upgrade for you.
Yeah.
Is that what I think it is?
Boing.
The family stuff does not quite work. I mean, even the stuff with Lewis. You know, I mean, I miss the original Lewis. I miss the gender dynamic there. And I miss the distant family stuff. It's a different dynamic. It's not entirely bad. I mean, it's a different scenario. But, I mean, it does feel very much like RoboCop, the live-action series, where it's like the family's kind of just hanging around. And it's like, well, there are plot elements there. But really, you know, plot possibilities, but really all they're here for is to help trigger this climax.
Yeah, exactly. That's it. They need to be just around just enough to feel present, to feel like a MacGuffin in the final act, which is kind of annoying. But they don't really serve a purpose. And it's of all the things that they have addressed and been intelligent about in this film, the family is the one that they are least intelligent about because it wouldn't work.
But also we've talked about how this is really a superhero kind of movie, right? This is like he's very much a cyborg. If any version of RoboCop could go back and live with his family, it's this guy.
Yeah.
Right? I mean, okay, so he's not going to be able to have sex with his wife, or at least penetrative sex. I mean, he could still lay with his wife. He could still take his kid to things. I mean, there are things he can't do. But that doesn't mean that he can't be, you know,
a relationship
a man.
with them. Yeah.
I mean, there are things that are working here. There are layers that I find interesting. I mean, I find this sort of like there's a gender argument being made about like, you know, how men identify with their work and throw themselves into work and, you know, and all of this. I mean, there are a lot of this is not a bad movie. And even in its bad stuff, there are layers and interesting aspects, even though I think, you know, the family's underutilized. Yeah,
I agree, and I would like to, if there had been a sequel, would like to have addressed that more. You know, some awkwardness and stuff in that in the sequel. The film culminates in a relatively impressive, if somewhat shooty, punchy kind of generic action sequence. But I do like him fighting under the two Ed 209s. We get to see two Ed 209s doing their shit, you know, and I think that's cool. I'm pleased with that. Him running away whilst being shot in the back and being, you know, and then the fact that Lois stepping in because it can't shoot cops and used it as a you know as a barrier. I love all that.
Shield.
Even Shield. all great stuff. I think that whole in him again using the sort of like that trigonometry and using the sort of like the trajectories and all that kind of stuff to do the jumps and to fight the two-head two knives, all good stuff. I kind of like that scene. And shoot his own arm off as well.
Oh yeah. I mean, all that stuff is good. It's not as memorable as the best stuff in the movie, but it's it's solid and stuff. I like this is sort of, and I'll give it a lot of credit for again having RoboCop confront Omnicorp / OCP, right? That we sort of in the end of Prime Directives, there's the ascent of the tower and sort of like this final. Here we're getting this in the original movie, right? Like it's going there, it's going to complete the plot arc. The big complaint about RoboCop 2 is that it didn't have a third act in which he would confront OCP, right? We like that, but I mean, again, credit where credit's due. As a writer, I really appreciate that they go there, and it is for the most part serviceable. I mean, I like the ED-209 stuff. We get the trainer comes back with the sort of like red, things, tags that keep RoboCop from being able to engage. All that stuff kind of comes back. It's not an A, but it's, certainly, sort of B level, solid working stuff. Yeah. But then it ends with this helicopter pad on the roof, right? Which symbolically you've got to the top of the tower. The CEO is thinking about leaving. He's invited the family up there. And RoboCop has defeated the trainer and made it all the way up there. And his arm is blown off. Like the family is reacting to how messed up he looks, And at this point, I feel like I've always hated this climax. I've always hated this scene because at this point, Michael Keaton, who's played a deft kind of like tech CEO really well, just changes his character completely and becomes a cartoon villain.
Yeah.
I've never understood this. He points the gun at the family and says, I can do this, and like I know what's being done here, right? You're illustrating how these tags work, and you can't attack an OCP person, but it's so cartoon. Like, they've already talked to the press, right? You're worried about managing them, and now you're threatening their lives. It's mind-boggling to me.
Yeah, no, it doesn't work, and it's that thing of like they, it's the same thing with shooting Dick Jones in the sort of the first one. It's kind of satisfying, isn't it? You kind of go, he was a scumbag throughout. He was manipulating people, like he had like Bob Morton killed. Like you kind of feel kind of happy when RoboCop shoots Dick Jones out the window.
Got it coming.
You got it coming. Yeah, exactly. Like even the old man sort of like Dick, you're fired. Thank you. Like it's all good, it's fine, I like it. It works well. Here, like you say, he's been a CEO. He's going like, well, we've got to get this legislation out of the way so I can sell my product. I've got to do stuff, and I'm commercially aware, and I'm going to use a marketing person. And some people are going to get trodden on, but like, he's not killing people or like putting other people's lives at risk. Like,
he's a good CEO.
He's
a little Machiavellian, but he's not evil until this scene.
Yeah, so I agree. Like, it feels weird. If anything, I feel like Maddox should be the one that gets this. They get rid of Maddox too quick, and I feel like this should be the thing on the roof, where even like we should. And it'd be even funny if we found out that actually Maddox has been working for OCP the entire time. And is willing to sacrifice Sellers, who Sellers is like, I didn't know what the hell's going on. Sort of like, I thought there's a what is it like? There's a person behind the person kind of thing. And Maddox is the sort of the one that gets taken out at the end. He's the kind of person that I think would turn a gun on a family and all this other stuff. I don't know. It feels kind of you're right. He becomes panto villain at the end, which is a bit much.
Yeah, I mean. I object to that, and then also this willpower thing that has been so key to this third act. literally RoboCop overcomes the entire setup of you can't hit somebody wearing the red tags through sheer willpower. What the fuck? Like,
I hate that.
This
Yeah.
is your own rule that you've established. At this point, none of the implants, are able to control him at all,
Mhm.
right? I mean, so I guess he's just an unleashed superhero now at the end. But I really, really hate both the, as you say, the panto villain thing, and also, lifting your arm to overcome, your programming and fire anyway.
I mean, at least Kinnaman's trying to show there's a conflict and it's a struggle for him to do. But even in the original, like, the old man had to fire Dick Jones in order for RoboCop to kill him. Like, he couldn't do it. Like, there was no way. Like, the vision kept going, like, scratching, and like his arm was moving off it. Like, he could not do it. Willpower was not a factor.
Right. Just like in real life, right? I mean, I think this the myth of willpower, like, well, just get off drugs, right? Have some willpower. Get out of poverty. Have some willpower. Every study in the world shows this is not actually a thing.
Yeah.
But I mean, this really lessens RoboCop here for me.
I agree. I agree. This is where, if anything, like, you should have the wife shoot him in the back of the head or something, and then be like, and then you've got to, like, oh shit, now you got RoboCop's going to deal with, like, his wife's a murderer.
Yeah, or I mean, I kept thinking, like, can RoboCop fire a ricochet or do something that would, clearly endanger the CEO's life, but isn't a direct shot? Could he convince him to jump? Could the wife shoot him? He's threatened the wife's life already. I mean, he'd say, I can't shoot you, but, my wife can, Yeah. I mean, there are so many clever ways of ending this, and this is the stupidest way.
Lewis should be the one that shoots him.
Yeah. That's true.
Jack Lewis should come in. He's already protected him. Now Jack's like, look, well, yeah, Robo can't do this, or Murphy can't do this. I don't have the programming, and red tags don't work on me. Like, there needs to be that
RoboCop
partnership.
can't do this, but that's what partners are here for, to pick up the slack and do what the other one can't.
Exactly.
Bam.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly.
That's dark. Yeah.
That would work so much better, and it would have that. I feel that Ann Lewis would do that for Robo, like that.
Oh yeah.
So yeah, I do feel that that there is that sort of, like, it's kind of disappointing. It's not satisfying in its finale in that sort of part. In the final scene, though, and I want to talk. I just want to come back and let's just round out with some Samuel L. Jackson as Pat Novak.
All movies should end with Samuel L. Jackson
just
doing
ranting.
Amazing roundup.
Yeah. I like they use some language in this, though, that, again, I think they have watched Fox News and other sort of right wing media, and they've gone. So they use things like, "Why is America robophobic?" Great line. And then later on, when they're talking about the Dreyfus Act and stuff, and not having, like, more RoboCops on the street and stuff, and they're like, "Is the Senate or is Congress pro-crime?"
Right. The question has to be asked, right? This is exactly how they do it, right? I'm just asking questions. Is Joe Biden pro-terrorist?
Yeah. We
have to ask.
I think so. I think all this is genius. Everything with Pat Novak is excellent. It's some of my favorite parts of the film. Everything from the beginning, when sort of like it all goes pear-shaped in Tehran, and they've got the suicide bombers, and he's like, "Oh well, this sort of CIA are telling us we have to cut the feed because of security measures, and then sort of all these other bits." The fact
but
of, like,
saved a reporter live on television, right?
Exactly.
I mean, like, the spin that's instantly put on it.
They saved the life of my colleague and brave reporter, so and so. Even down to,
instead of, like, what are you doing? You've allowed a suicide bomber's attack, and we've watched a kid get killed. Instead, that's spun on the spot to be how heroic. I agree. This is good shit.
But also, even down to, like, little things like when they have Raymond Sellers confront Senator Dreyfus. Dreyfus is there as a hologram, and they have Sellers there in person. And I'm like, oh, this is totally the kind of thing they would do. this shows a partnership between Dreyfus, between Sellers and Novak and all this other stuff. Like,
and they cut him off and
Yeah.
I mean, I will say I'm a little bothered by the like heads up display kind of stuff that he gestures. It's like, you're gesturing into space. How does it, know to bring this
well,
up?
it shows
But-
you all the people. It shows you the production team live around it, and I love all that as well. Like, it shows how the show works, so that's cool.
But it wouldn't be as well coordinated as
No,
that. Like, it's all just a little. But that's a minor gripe. I mean, all of that stuff is really good. My only other complaint is that the Novak stuff is not integrated into the plot. So like they have that. There were a couple times where like they mention using him, in like PR, right? And obviously there's that interview. That's it's almost as if he's off in a separate, like he could have been added late in the process, right? And they clearly don't want you to feel that way, which is why they have those interviews happen. But no, Samuel L. Jackson, is great, and
and
the
rant, the rant at the end, when it talks about, and he basically goes off on one about Dr. Norton has sort of obviously appeared in front of Congress and is now sort of like is a whistleblower, and he just goes off one and says, "This motherfucker," and he goes like full Pulp Fiction,
traitor,
traitor, brilliant. Like the aggression of it is
Well, and then this kind of like non sequitur about America that it ends on, right? Which really is a non sequitur. I mean, it's like, well, yes, we haven't won. The causes that I believe in haven't won, but the one thing I know is, America will always be the finest place. And it ends with that note, and I think it's clearly, I don't know. I feel like the sort of American patriotism stuff coming right at the end is a little strange to me. It's brilliantly done. Cinematically it's fantastic. I mean, I love the opening shot of just Samuel L. Jackson from behind warming up, where you're like, how does RoboCop start this way? Like, this is the weirdest way, which is arresting and surprising and just a brilliant hook in. And it ends with this crescendo of the digital American flag and all. I mean, all of this is brilliantly done. It does feel a little bit of like a non sequitur, and like they're making it too much about drones. At the end, like they're trying to put that. It's like a student paper that gets to the end and is like, here are the deeper themes. But I still like it. I mean, it's still firing at a high rate.
Oh yeah, no, I know what you're saying, but I'm liking it. And again, I think this comes down to the performance as well. Like you've said, like Norton, Gary Oldman nails it. I think he always does. I think he's fantastic in this. But like, no, again, talking of the superhero thing, like we know at this point there are people coming into this that know Samuel L. Jackson as Nick Fury. They're going, I've seen him as Nick Fury in the Avengers. Oh, I bet he's like one of the hero cops in this. He comes in with this wig and just like shouting at the screen. Brilliant. I love how this sort of subverts that expectation and stuff. So I think they've done a great job there. But yeah, no, I think it works really well, and I think the Novak element is well done, and I think it nails the film in a good place at the end. It reveals the two of the key elements. It kind of gives you the drop for like, here's the sequel parts that RoboCop. We have footage of him. This was handed to us on from a cell phone that's incredibly sort of doesn't well lit and not shaky at all, which is great. But it shows RoboCop with his wife and son, and Robo. We know that Robo's been rebuilt and he's met his wife and son, and but now it's out there that he's alive, and it was a lie that he'd been killed and all this other stuff. But also, it has been done and funded by Omnicore's parent company, Omni Consumer Products, OCP. And so you're like, oh, I'm now primed for the sequel. Like, this was the origin story. Okay, what comes next, kind of thing. And even watching
so overt that it's not like there's an unresolved plot, right?
No.
Like, it's not like there's a post-credits scene where it's like, we're never going to get a resolution to this.
it's enough
it's
that it
suddenly
tells
enough.
you. Yeah, it's enough that sort of tells you, like, we know the public is now aware that RoboCop is still alive and is out there. But also, I love this kind of thing of there's always a parent company.
Mhm.
Everyone owns everybody else, and you get the nod to OCP, and it's called OCP, and it has the original logo. So it could be just taken as an Easter egg, and you go, "Oh, that's a nice nod." But he's still owned by a company. He's still funded and everything else. It goes back to that.
Yeah, and if you were wondering why we called it Omnicorp instead of OCP, here's the sort of reveal.
Yeah.
No, it's smart. It's good stuff.
I do wonder if they had sequel ideas, and this was sort of like some of the stuff they were going to lead to. But
they must have. How do you feel about just before that? When we've seen RoboCop repaired, and you have the family come in, and the door shuts, so we don't see it. I've always felt sort of like, on the one hand, part of me feels that it's the movie saying that's private, right?
Yeah.
Like, we don't need to show that. That's between them, and we're going to honor the family. But then another voice in my head says, you haven't really fleshed out the family stuff anyway, and now you're not going to give us the scene of him
option
being
2.
emotional with the family.
It's option 2, 100%.
Yeah.
It's totally option 2, where I'm like, they're like, we haven't really built anything into these characters other than the story that needed to get to the finale. So I don't know how to deal with this scene. So we'll just close the door on it and we'll address it at a future date. Like, that's, I think leave it with someone else. Some of the writer and director can pick this up. They'll deal with it.
Let them build the delicate relationships.
Yeah. Yeah, it's funny. I mean, the film that came to my mind as a sequel on this, and this is a weird sort of like non sequitur of how this would go. There's a film called The Santa Claus with Tim Allen from like 1991, I think it is.
Yes,
and
it is.
It is
also a movie.
It is a movie. So it was, yeah. But my point being, in the film, all right, and this, just let me just, all right. I'm not saying I like that film.
Yeah,
it's a family tradition in this house, but one of the things that happens in that film is his son, like, so Tim Allen's character in that, Scott Calvin, becomes Santa Claus. And his son knows now that not only is Santa Claus real, but his dad is Santa Claus, right? So at the end of the film, there is a thing of like, they sort of like raise magic by people knowing that Santa Claus is real and all this other shit. Anyway, one of the key parts of the sequel is, because the kid's older, so the film's set later, how does a teenager who everyone around them's gone, well, I don't believe in Santa anymore because I'm older and all this other stuff. How does a teenager who knows it's real, but more than that knows his dad's Santa, deal with that and have this kind of like secret, but like, wants to and has to try and tell people? And it kind of deals with it quite well, where he kind of has to act out, because then there's a scene where he's like, well, what am I supposed to tell people you are? Like, you work on an oil rig? Like, I never see you. You don't, we don't have, you can't come round for this and you can't do that. And I was like, as I was watching this, I was going, oh shit, like that's the kind of thing they're going to have to do, where it's like, this kid's going to grow up and be like, yeah, my dad's RoboCop, but I can't, he can't come to the sort of like the father-son baseball game, or
he can't come to like parent-teacher day at school,
Yeah.
Like, bring him to show and tell. Yeah. We don't have that kind of relationship.
He can't go on like a family camping trip because they have to bring a massive chair with him to sort of plug him in and charge him up. Like, I thought there's some interesting ideas that's going to have, and it's going to be like petulant son, which is a bit of a trope, but like they're going to have to deal with it. And I thought that was kind of interesting that they could go in that way.
Well, he's going to get the Pacific Rim mech, where you just plug the lungs and head into
the Hulkbuster the Hulkbuster RoboCop. That's what
you know that. You could do it with this RoboCop.
They would have done that, wouldn't they? Yeah, they would have. Oh my word!
But I think this is a solid, good movie. I mean, it has the problems of action, sort of superhero kind of blockbuster movies of its era, right?
Mm-hmm.
But every remake, just like every staging of a play, right, has to make choices and make adaptations, and you hope that they are considered and intelligent. We have seen so many remakes that are not.
Yeah.
This is one that is. It's not perfect. Mm-hmm. Those choices aren't 100%, but they're, batting at a high level. And does, like all of the, intelligent, interesting remakes, actually inform the original, right? We see even more the effect of like revealing Alex Murphy's face in the original and the ways in which this feels more like a cyborg, right? Or like a guy in a suit, So, we sort of, and everybody knows he's Alex Murphy, in this. So, I mean, this does sort of inform and help us to understand the original. It's smart. It's well done. It's brilliantly casted. It's brilliantly acted. It makes smart choices. It has some scenes that are worse than others. It has a climax that, while not offensive like so many superhero climaxes, is kind of, silly and little letdown. But this is a solid, good movie. Not the best remake ever, but I mean certainly above average, and deserves a lot more credit than it gets.
No, I agree, and it's one of those weird films that sort of it stands in the shadow of its predecessor, and I think it's one of those weird ones that you hear people talk about. And I think I heard this recently when it was The Crow. There was The Crow remake of recently. I didn't see it, to be fair, but like they were like, oh, this is sacrilege, how can you do this? Brandon Lee was killed making the original, and you go, oh, cool. You do know there were like 3 sequels and a TV show.
Yeah.
Like,
of course.
Why are you so up in arms about this? This makes no sense. Kind of feel like that with this, where they're going like, oh, this is a sacrilege of RoboCop and it doesn't do this, doesn't it? You go, cool. Have you seen RoboCop 3? Have you tried to watch Prime Directives? Like, don't get your ass in your hands about like, some of these things. Like,
they made Alpha Commando. Shut your pie hole.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, exactly. Like, everything you're complaining about has already happened, but is more offensive because they try to make it the original RoboCop. At least they say like, no, this is they've gone from a different take. They've done it differently. They've tried to be sort of more grounded. They've tried to do, some different themes and sort of tackle some bits. They've made it relevant to 2014, as you sort of said. Yeah,
and
this
in smart
is
ways.
Yeah,
I mean, so many of these remakes and sequels, try to make it relevant, and it feels like grafted on. It feels, cheap. This does not feel thoughtless.
No.
This feels like they've made decisions. Those decisions have advantages and disadvantages. The advantages are really strong. The disadvantages are significant, but that's fascinating. Like these are smart decisions. I have
some
a lot
good
of respect
ideas.
for them.
Yeah. So,
I wish all remakes were this good.
Yeah, I agree. Like I say, it's not the best, but I appreciate everything good that they do. And if this is the end of the RoboCop franchise, I don't think it will be. I'm sure there'll be something that crops up at some point. But
the rumor is that Amazon is working on a TV series or something because,
James Bond versus RoboCop.
Hey, I mean, I already said I'm willing to watch RoboCop versus Jaws. So
that's true. That's true. Yeah. That's it. And
Amazon can do it, right? I mean, if they could do The Boys, they can go back to,
and
they don't have to worry about a PG-13 rating, right? And getting, $500 million out of theatrical seats, right?
Yeah, no, I agree.
Look, you can do a new take on RoboCop. It can be interesting. This didn't happen to take off. I would have loved to have seen a sequel. I would have loved to have seen, more RoboCop. This is not my RoboCop, but it's not not my RoboCop. I'm angry. Yeah. This is not my RoboCop, but interesting and fascinating, and I want to see more anyway.
Yeah, no, I agree. Well, anyway, that is the end of our RoboCop sojourn. Really, we've done a lot, and I'm kind of pleased. In fact, I'm really pleased we've done it because it was, it had been, I don't know, like it's not a series I've gone full tilt on in the past. Like I've seen the films and then I've sort of known of the other bits, but this is one where I was like, no, I want to know more. So I am very glad that we.
Would you like to know more?
Which, yeah. I hope it's not the end of Robocop. I do hope we get something more at some point in the future, but we shall see. But that's it. We are done with Robocop, and we're now into. I'm not gonna spoil it, but we're now into the next season, and it's kind of like our return to, some sequels and some follow-ups and some cycles and all this other kind of stuff that we're going to sort of tidy up or carry on from. There'll be a couple of remakes in there, I think.
Do the Redux season.
Yeah.
Sort of like following through. Do you want to list the films?
If you've got them, I haven't got them in front of me. I'm just trying to find them.
I've got them. Because we did Jack Arnold, we had that whole 50s block. We have Creature from the Black Lagoon and The Incredible Shrinking Man. Then we have King Kong versus Godzilla, the third Godzilla film, following up on the two we've already done. Nigel Keel. We've got the Year of the Sex Olympics and the Stone Tape. Then we have finally Stalker, Tarkovsky.
Yes.
And then we have the third installment of Star Wars and Star Trek, Return of the Jedi and Search for Spock. We have the 95 Judge Dredd. We're finally going to talk about the good Judge Dredd with Sly Stallone. We have the Fifth Element from Luc Besson.
Yeah.
We have Transformers: Revenge of the Fallen, the second Transformers. I'm sure everyone will love that one. Zack Snyder's Sucker Punch. And Terry Gilliam's The Zero Theorem. We did all the other Terry Gilliam sci-fi stuff.
Yeah.
Quite a fun list.
It is. I'm looking forward to a lot of those. I mean, King Kong versus Godzilla. Just so you know, ladies and gentlemen, this is the 60s one. This is not
the good
most.
One.
Yes, not the most recent one.
I haven't seen it, but it cannot be worse than the legendary
I don't know. There is some fun to be had in the 60s one, I have to admit. So I'm looking forward to the original.
Yeah.
I own it on DVD. Like obviously.
Who am I asking?
Yeah.
If it's sock puppets, it's going to be better than the Legendary Pictures one.
It has some amazing scenes that I have to admit I do kind of. They are funny in not always the best ways, but some great stuff in there. Really looking forward to this season. Anyway, ladies and gentlemen, we shall leave you there. Don't forget, if you're watching this, as we go, and watching along with us, please let us know what are your thoughts on this RoboCop remake. Is it good, bad, indifferent? Did you go see it in cinemas? Do you think it deserved a sequel, or are you glad that this sort of killed off the franchise? Let us know. But also, if you're watching this in retrospect and we'll move on, still let us know. We want to know. This is some time later. But if you've watched this in retrospect and you're watching this on the main feed or listening to this on the main feed, go check out the Patreon, because there's a whole ton of stuff now available. We're doing hundreds and hundreds of shows now, so go check out hours and hours of just discussing different things. Go check out www.patreon.com/20CG Media. Go check it out, and there's a whole load of stuff on there. Links down below. But for now, Julian, thank you very much for this conversation and for going through the RoboCop franchise with me and suffering Alpha Command and. And you watched more Prime Directives than I did, so thank you. Well done.
I watched all of it.
You watched all of it. I couldn't do it. Sorry.
I think I made it through more of the live action one, but you made it through more of Alpha Commando.
Yeah.
I mean, we've
all suffered in this. Really, there's no winners.
It's been a slog, but it's a fascinating slog. Because both of us are. RoboCop is dear to our hearts. I would say. Certainly those first two are among my favorite sci-fi movies ever made.
Yeah, no, they're good, and I think it's an interesting how this franchise has been treated over the years. Is needs to be studied some more. But for now, ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much, and we shall see you on the next episode.